Hi, it's Ashley. So today I'm going to be talking about bipolar disorder. I was diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder about 9-ish months ago. And the way that I was diagnosed is that I was struggling with my mental health. I knew I had anxiety and depression and ADHD. And I decided that I needed to get help. And part of getting help was getting on medication if I needed it. So I went to a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I sometimes get them confused. I'm pretty sure I went to a psychiatrist. I'm not great with words. But I went in and, you know, they were asking all the basic questions. They were like, oh, do you drink alcohol? Like, blah, blah, blah. How much do you sleep? And he asked me how much I slept, and I said, oh, anywhere between 2 and 23 hours, which genuinely is not an exaggeration. And he was kind of taken aback. He was like, what? He did the doctor version of being like, what the fuck, dude? So, he was like, well, how do you feel when you get 2 hours of sleep? And I was like, I feel great, honestly. Like, I feel like I can do a bunch of stuff. I feel productive. Like, I'm staying awake. I'm reorganizing my room. I'm doing all my homework. Like, I'm getting a lot done because I have more time in the day. And he's like, well, how long does it typically last? And I'm like, oh, about a week or two. He's like, how do you feel when you get 23 hours of sleep? And I'm like, oh, I feel terrible because I'm not getting out of bed. And that's usually when I'm most depressed because I'm not doing anything. I don't feel productive. And so that's really when I feel bad. And he was like, yeah, okay. How long does that last? And I was like, oh yeah, like about a week or two. And he was like, yeah, you have bipolar disorder. You have bipolar 2. And I was like, what? Because I was not expecting that even slightly. Because I just thought it was normal. I would just thought like, oh, like when you're depressed, you sleep a lot, and then other times you don't sleep a lot. So like, it's whatever. But yeah, so that began my journey. And it was really hard for me to accept at first because there are a lot of misconceptions about bipolar disorder, you know. There's a lot of misconceptions about how people with bipolar disorder have instant mood shifts and they can go from happy to furious with you in a moment. And there's a lot of misconceptions about how people with bipolar disorder are toxic or like extra crazy or, you know, dangerous even. And that's not really true. That's not really accurate. Just like any person, no matter their mental state, they can be dangerous. But like having bipolar disorder doesn't make you extra dangerous or anything like that. But yeah, so I really struggled with it, but I've now come to terms with it. I've now embraced it, and I think that it's given me power. One of the things that I also struggled with a lot is that people with bipolar disorder tend to have to go on to a lot of medication in order to curb certain things. So you have to go on like antidepressants and mood stabilizers and anti-seizure medication because for some reason that helps with your chemicals in your brain. I'm not sure. I'm no scientist. I don't know how it works. But it's usually a combination of medications, and I was planning to maybe take one on and off for the rest of my life, not have to have like 4 or 5 for the rest of my life. So that was hard for me to grapple with and hard for me to fully accept. But I'm now on my medications and I'm doing so much better. So many things in my life have improved that I didn't even know could improve. I didn't know I could be happy in this way. I never imagined living a life like this. I always just kind of assumed that I would be sad forever and that my mental illness was just going to stick around forever and that I couldn't do anything about it. And so it's so relieving to be like, no, there are solutions. You know, I'm always going to struggle with it, but there's a way to get through it. But so anyway, the difference between bipolar 1 and bipolar 2, I made graphs for this because I like to be thorough. So this is what somebody with bipolar disorder might go through. So this is the mood, and this is like happiness, and this is like sadness. So you have moments where you're kind of happy, you could be really happy, you get a new job, get engaged, you know, something happens, and then you could like have your car break down, you know, something bad happens, but you're just like regular, you know, as life goes on, your mood shifts according to your life. So bipolar 1 is more like this. So let's say that green is just plain old vanilla happiness. Your manic episodes up here are more like intense. So you may be way more happy, like way ecstatic to the point where you're delusional. So you can think that like you've been blessed and everything good is happening to you ever, so you can get away with anything. So you're gonna start doing meth, and you're gonna start jumping off bridges because you can fly and things like that, when that's not really what is happening. You also tend to make riskier decisions, such as like, I'm gonna buy 3 cars right now, or I'm gonna do online shopping until I'm in debt, you know what I mean? Like things like that. And so that's what a manic episode looks like. You can also have irritability with it, especially when somebody comes between you and what you believe. And so then down here is your depressive episodes, which just is depression. And you can, after having a manic episode, you can easily go into a depressive episode, because let's say you just spent all your life savings on online shopping. Well, now you have to deal with the consequences, and feel guilty, you feel terrible about it. So you then get into this low point of depression. So that's what bipolar 1 looks like. So bipolar 2 is more like this. So the manic episodes are not as intense. They're not as big. So like, for example, with my manic episodes, one time when I was having one, I convinced myself I was going to teach myself the entire Spanish language in a week. It was delusional. It was something that was not going to happen, but it wasn't necessarily dangerous, and it wasn't necessarily a risky decision. And a lot of times in my manic episodes, I, you know, would redecorate my room in a week, or reorganize everything in my life. And, you know, it's not as intense, it's not as risky, but it's still just as delusional. And it's still something that's not happening. And a lot of people with bipolar 2 disorder don't realize that the hypomanic episodes are something that's wrong. They think that that's their normal, that that's their productive, that that's their baseline. So then you still have just as deep of a depressive episode though. So you still get depressed all the time, which is why I thought that I just had depression. And also I forgot to mention, with hypomanic and manic episodes, you get anxiety and you get anxious a lot of times. So like for me, when my hypomanic episodes, I'll be like redecorating my room, and I'll be like having a million ideas, and I'll be like, I'm gonna do this and this and this and this and this, and then everything will feel like it's spinning too much, and like it's too much, and I start to have anxiety, and I start shaking, and I have to calm down because it's too much for me. Even though I was happy and I was doing something I like, the anxiety just comes. So the depressive episodes are the same, but the manic episodes are a little lesser with bipolar 2. But I've heard that bipolar 2 is more persistent. The depressive episodes tend to stick around longer, so that's because some people say that it's the easier bipolar disorder. It's the bipolar light. But it's still something people struggle with, and it still can be hard. But the manic episodes can feel amazing. That's the issue too, is that a lot of people with bipolar disorder get off their meds because they miss the manic episodes. And it's something that I completely understand, because I've gone through phases where I've wanted to get off my meds because I'm like, well, I miss being productive. I miss doing this. I miss those nights where I stay up way too late doing fun stuff all the time. And so it can be really hard. But yeah, so there you have it. Those are the differences between bipolar 1 and bipolar 2. If you have bipolar disorder, I strongly suggest reaching out, getting help in whatever way that you mean. If you would like to go unmedicated, talk to your doctors about it, talk to, you know, your counselors about it, live your life. If you feel like you might have bipolar 1 or 2, you know, reach out, get help, see what other people think. A lot of times bipolar 2 is misdiagnosed in women as depression and in men as ADHD, especially at a young age. But yeah, so there you have it. I hope you learned something, and I hope that you came away from this with a little more knowledge on what bipolar disorder is.